Here we are, standing before a dilemma that has troubled seekers, mystics, and spiritual wanderers for thousands of years, the struggle with lust. And what makes this battle so peculiar, so profoundly confusing, is that it seems to intensify the more spiritually awake you become. The more conscious you are of the divine, the stronger the pull of desire appears. Why should this be so? Why should the very person who sincerely longs for truth, God, wisdom, or awakening be the very one who wrestles most fiercely with the fire of desire? To understand this, we must look honestly at the full picture, not the sanitized, polite parts people usually discuss, but the hidden layers beneath. And I warn you, this is not a comforting sermon. This is an invitation to see the truth as it really is. The first reality is this: spiritual awakening does not make you less human, it makes you more human. When you begin to wake up, when the fog of unconsciousness begins to lift and life appears in sharper focus, you do not become numb or detached from human experience. Quite the contrary. You become more aware of everything. The divine, certainly, but also the earthly, the vulnerable, the painful, the ecstatic, and the animalistic aspects of being alive. Before awakening, most people move through life in a kind of half-dream. Their senses are dulled, their inner perception is clouded, their awareness dimmed by routine, distraction, and identification with the surface of things. But awakening is like turning up the volume on existence. Suddenly the world becomes vivid. Colors appear richer. Food tastes more alive. Birdsong sounds sharper. The warmth of sunlight on your skin carries a deeper sweetness. And yes, desire becomes stronger. This is the first reason why spiritually awake individuals experience lust so intensely. Spiritual sensitivity amplifies all sensation. When you open the inner eye, you do not open it only to the heavens. You open it to the full spectrum of human experience. The same sensitivity that allows you to perceive subtle spiritual truths also heightens your awareness of the body's impulses. The same consciousness capable of recognizing divine beauty also perceives human beauty with startling intensity. Older religious traditions often misunderstood this. They believed awakening would dull the flesh, weaken desire, or sever the bonds of human longing. But this is not what happens. A spiritually awakened person feels more deeply joy, sorrow, clarity, confusion, longing, peace, and yes, lust. Awakening doesn't silence your humanity, it expands it. It raises the stakes. It amplifies the intensity of existing as both a body and a soul. So when you find yourself seeking God and simultaneously feeling desire surge through you more powerfully than ever, it is not a sign of regression. It is not evidence that you are losing your way. It is often a sign that you are becoming more alive, more conscious, more deeply attuned to the essence of what it is to be human. The question is never how to eliminate feeling. The question is how to relate to what you feel without being enslaved by it. Now let's consider a second reason, one that is harder to admit. People who begin to wake up often find themselves increasingly alone. Not because they are superior, but because their perception shifts beyond the structures that once held them. The usual conversations lose their charm. Gossip becomes unbearable. Shallow talk feels hollow and weightless. The relentless obsession with money, image, status, and superficial goals begins to look like children playing at building castles in the sand. And so the awakened person drifts away from the crowd. Or the crowd drifts away from them. Either way, isolation emerges. And loneliness, true, spiritual loneliness, is a hunger far deeper than ordinary loneliness. When no one around you sees what you see, when there is no one with whom you can share the depths of your thoughts, when the insights rising within you seem too strange or delicate to express, the heart grows heavy. The isolation cuts deeply. Lust, in this context, becomes a kind of bridge back to human connection. Even if the connection is shallow. Even if it is temporary. Even if it is an illusion. At least for a moment, the ache of loneliness dissolves. The body pressed against another body, the brief warmth of touch, the fleeting intimacy, these moments lift the weight of isolation, if only for an hour. Do you see the trap? The path that draws you closer to truth simultaneously distances you from the world's ordinary comforts. The human animal within you still longs for connection. It longs for touch, for closeness, for validation, for warmth. Lust offers a counterfeit solution, a moment of relief that ultimately deepens the isolation when it ends. This is why monks, saints, mystics, and spiritual seekers across history have battled desire in hidden, painful secrecy. They withdrew from the world to seek God. And they found God, yes, but they also found solitude, silence, and a crushing absence of human companionship. And lust came knocking at the door of that solitude, offering comfort, offering human presence, offering a lie disguised as intimacy. The third reason is even more enigmatic. When you begin to awaken spiritually, you become a threat. Not necessarily to people, though sometimes to them as well, but to the forces that prefer humanity to remain asleep. Call these forces whatever you like: darkness, inertia, ego, inner demons, unconscious momentum. Their nature is the same. These forces do not want clarity. They do not want awareness spreading. They do not want you stepping out of the trance that governs most human lives. So they look for weak points. And lust is one of the most effective entry points available to them. Why? Because desire pulls consciousness downward. Into the body. Into urgency. Into confusion. Into the feverish need for satisfaction. When lust burns brightly, meditation becomes almost impossible. Prayer becomes hollow. Stillness becomes unreachable. Awareness collapses into craving. And so the more spiritually aware you become, the stronger these temptations attack, not because you are doing something wrong, but because you are doing something right. The forces of sleep do not yield their prisoners quietly. This is what the ancient traditions called spiritual warfare. It is not metaphorical, it is experiential. Now we arrive at the fourth reason, one of the deepest and most uncomfortable truths beneath this entire struggle. Lust is not merely a force that rises from the body. Lust often emerges from wounds. Old wounds. Hidden wounds. Wounds most people never dare to examine. Every human life carries its share of unhealed places: the abandoned child, the rejected teenager, the humiliated adult, the parts of us that were shamed, ignored, betrayed, or simply left unseen. Most of humanity goes through life without ever truly examining these wounds. They bury them beneath work, entertainment, relationships, distractions, and the relentless pursuit of pleasure. But awakening disturbs the burial ground. When you begin to wake up spiritually, your inner perception sharpens. The fog lifts, and you begin to feel not only the presence of the divine but also the unresolved pain that has lived inside you for years, sometimes decades. The spiritual light that illuminates truth also illuminates wounds. Pain rises. Old memories surface. Long-buried emotions return: the fear of not being loved, the shame of being unwanted, the belief that you are not enough. And here is where lust enters like a seductive whisper. Lust offers a false remedy. It promises to soothe the old wounds. It offers a momentary balm, a brief experience in which you feel wanted, desirable, alive, validated. For a short time, the pain quiets. For a short time, the wounded child within you feels held. But it is an illusion. Lust cannot heal a wound. Lust merely covers the wound, like placing a cloth over a deep infection without cleaning it. The infection remains, and often grows worse. Because now shame is added to the wound. Now regret is added. Now the repeating cycle of using and being used adds a heavy weight on top of the already existing pain. And here lies the torment of the spiritually awake. They can see the entire cycle. They see the wound. They see the desire rising to cover it. They see the shame that follows. They see the moment of clarity afterward, when everything becomes painfully obvious. And seeing the cycle does not make it easier to escape. Sometimes seeing it makes it even more agonizing because now you are fully conscious of the trap even as you step into it. This is why deeper healing becomes unavoidable for the awakened person. Lust is not the real enemy, it is merely a messenger pointing toward unhealed places. But the work of healing is profoundly difficult. It requires facing what you've avoided for years. It requires sitting in loneliness instead of distracting yourself through pleasure. It requires facing memories you would rather forget. It demands patience, courage, and vulnerability. And most people, even deeply spiritual individuals, would rather battle lust than confront the deeper wound beneath it. Lust offers moments of sweetness, however false. Healing offers pain, at least in the beginning. But true healing begins only when you choose to stop running. Now we reach the fifth reason, perhaps the most paradoxical, the most mysterious, and the most dangerous. The very gifts that make you spiritually powerful also make you vulnerable. When your consciousness expands, when your sensitivity heightens, when your awareness grows subtle and refined, you are operating at a high energetic frequency. Your spiritual perception widens. You feel everything, the divine, the interconnectedness of all life, the presence of something far greater than the small self. But you are still in a human body. You still have a nervous system, hormones, instincts, hunger, loneliness, and physical needs. You remain both spirit and animal at the same time. And here is the strange law of balance. The higher your consciousness rises, the stronger the gravitational pull of physical desire becomes. Not because something is wrong with you, but because the universe seems to maintain equilibrium. The elevated spiritual state creates a counterweight, a pull downward into the physical. This is why so many spiritual teachers, prophets, healers, mystics, even those considered enlightened, have stumbled through scandals of the flesh. Not because they were fraudulent. Not because their teachings were false. But because expanding upward without grounding downward creates instability. A tall building without a foundation collapses with greater force. The answer to this is not denial. Not suppression. Not self-hatred. The answer is integration, a discipline that is gentle, intelligent, compassionate, and whole. You cannot soar in the spiritual dimension while neglecting your body. You cannot meditate for hours, pray deeply, contemplate eternally, and simultaneously expect the physical self to remain silent. The body must be honored. Fed properly. Moved. Rested. Held. Heard. Loved. Given healthy expression. When the body is ignored, desire becomes ravenous. When the heart is neglected, lust becomes a desperate substitute for intimacy. When the emotional wounds are untouched, desire becomes an escape from pain. But when the body is cared for, when the soul is held, when the wounds are healed, lust loses much of its power. It no longer has to fill 10 different holes at once. So the question becomes: how do we live with this strange pairing, heightened spiritual sensitivity and intensified physical desire? The first step is honesty. We stop pretending the battle does not exist. We stop acting as though spiritual people are supposed to float above desire, beyond longing, beyond the complexity of being human. No. Spiritual awakening makes the flesh more vivid, not less. And you cannot win a battle you refuse to acknowledge. The second step is refusing to fight alone. Isolation is part of the trap. Lust thrives in silence. It grows in secrecy. Shame deepens the wound. When even one trustworthy person enters the space, someone who can listen without judgment, the cycle begins to weaken. Confession is not magic. But connection is. The third step is tending to the wounds. This means embracing the pain you have avoided. Feeling the loneliness without numbing it. Allowing old memories to come to the surface. Letting the heart grieve what it never received. Healing is painful, but it is the only path that leads out of the cycle. The fourth step is practicing presence with desire, without acting on it. This is extraordinarily difficult. When lust rises, the instinct is either indulgence or suppression. Both are forms of violence. The middle way is simply to feel without performing. To allow the wave to rise, crest, and fall. To observe the heat of desire without obeying it. In this space, this courageous space of non-action, transformation begins. We will continue from here. And now we move into the heart of the teaching, the step that many seekers misunderstand. Because after all the struggle, after the rising and falling of desire, after the loneliness, the wounds, the spiritual attacks, you arrive at a deeper realization. You are not the battle. This may be the most liberating truth of all. For years, perhaps for decades, you have believed that the struggle itself defines you, that the presence of desire means something is wrong with you, that the rising of lust shows a flaw in your character, that the inward battle means you are spiritually weak or immature. But that belief is one of the greatest illusions of all. The battle happens within you, yes, but it is not you. The desire arises in your awareness, but it is not your essence. The wave of wanting appears, grows, peaks and fades, but you are not the wave. You are the ocean. Think of the sky. Storms gather, lightning flashes, thunder rolls across the horizon. Dark clouds swallow the light. And yet the sky itself is untouched. The weather changes, the sky does not. It remains vast, open, unbroken. Your awareness is the same. The desires come and go. The emotions rise and fall. The sensations intensify and dissolve. The shame appears and disappears. The temptations strengthen and weaken. But the awareness in which all of this unfolds, that open, silent, spacious field, remains unchanged. It is eternal. Untouched. Complete. You are that awareness. The battle may continue. Lust may arise. The old wounds may ache. But when you rest even for a moment in this deeper identity, the awareness behind all experience, the battle loses its power to define you. You begin to see desire not as an enemy, but as a teacher. A messenger. A wave passing through the boundless sky of consciousness. This is where spiritual maturity begins. Because the spiritually awake do not struggle with lust because they are failing, they struggle because they are awake enough to feel everything fully. They sense every current of human experience, every tension between spirit and body, every whisper of the divine and every craving of the flesh. To be spiritually awake is to be exquisitely sensitive, and sensitivity is both a gift and a weight. It means you cannot numb yourself the way others do. You cannot drown your emotions in distraction. You cannot abandon your inner truth just to fit in. You cannot pretend the battle isn't happening, because you feel every part of it. And so the awakened are vulnerable. Not because they are weak, but because they are permeable. Open. Alive. Capable of feeling the entire spectrum of the human condition without shutting down. This is why compassion grows so naturally out of awakening. When you have felt the rawness of your own desires, when you have seen your own shadows without turning away, when you have watched yourself fall into the same trap again and again, you cannot judge others. You understand. You see the shared humanity beneath the surface. You recognize that everyone is carrying wounds. Everyone is fighting invisible battles. Everyone is trying to soothe a pain no one else can see. The struggle with lust can soften you, humble you, deepen you. It can break the hard shell of pride. It can dissolve the illusion of superiority. It can reveal your own vulnerability, and therefore your connection with all people. But to reach this place, you must learn what few are willing to learn. Lust is not conquered through force. Lust dissolves through understanding. If you fight it directly, you strengthen it. If you suppress it, it grows in the dark. If you indulge it, it grows through repetition. Only presence dissolves it. Only awareness transforms it. Only truth releases it. The awakened person learns to sit with desire the way one sits with a fire, not too close to be burned, not too far to forget it's there. They learn to feel the heat without feeding the flames. They learn to watch the movement of desire without merging with it. This is not easy. It is perhaps one of the hardest disciplines in all of spiritual life. But it is also one of the most liberating. Because in this discipline, you discover something extraordinary. Desire is not the enemy. Identification is. The moment you think, this desire is me, you are lost. But the moment you realize, this desire is happening in me, you are free. And so you walk this delicate middle path. Not indulging desire. Not suppressing desire. Not condemning desire. Simply watching desire. And in this watching, something miraculous begins to happen. Subtle at first. Barely perceptible. But real. The desire loses intensity. The wound beneath it begins to breathe. The fear wrapped around it begins to release. The shame that once fueled the cycle begins to dissolve. The body relaxes. The mind quiets. The heart softens. You begin to understand that desire has been speaking to you all along, speaking through loneliness, through hunger, through longing, through touch starvation, through unhealed memories. And when you listen closely, truly listen, the desire no longer needs to scream. This is the deeper transformation. Not the killing of desire, but the maturing of desire. Not the silencing of longing, but the healing of longing. Not the rejection of the flesh, but the integration of the flesh. You stop being at war with yourself. You stop splitting your humanity from your divinity. You stop living torn between two worlds. You realize you are both. And the peace comes from holding both. Because the battle with lust, at its deepest level, is not about sex. It is about the longing to return to wholeness. To rediscover connection. To remember who you are beneath all the layers of fear and pain and desire. This is why lust stings so deeply. Because its distortion comes from a holy longing. A longing for intimacy. A longing for union. A longing to lose the small self and return to something larger. And when you understand this, truly understand it, the entire relationship with desire changes. It softens. It quiets. It becomes transparent. Not because you have defeated it, but because you have finally heard what it was trying to say. So now we arrive at the final and perhaps most important part of this entire teaching, the integration, the returning to yourself after all the turmoil, the confusion, the intensity of the inner struggle. Because ultimately, the battle with lust is not about defeating an enemy. It is about understanding yourself more completely than you ever have before. And the resolution of this battle is not found in force, nor in shame, nor in self-punishment, but in a kind of gentle clarity, a soft wisdom that comes only to those who have walked through the fire and dared to look at themselves honestly. Let us begin with something many spiritual seekers forget. You are not supposed to float above your humanity. You are meant to inhabit it fully. The idea that spiritual people should not struggle with desire is one of the most damaging illusions ever created. Because what it implies, subtle though it may be, is that being human is somehow a flaw, a defect, a stain that must be conquered. But awakening does not remove your humanity. It reveals it. Enlightenment does not erase your flesh. It illuminates it. The divine does not cancel the animal. It embraces it. Your job is not to become some sterile creature floating above human nature. Your task is to become fully human, consciously human. And that includes desire. That includes longing. That includes sexuality in its raw, elemental power. The spiritually awake struggle with lust not because they are corrupt, but because they are alive. They are feeling everything fully. They are open. They are porous. And they are no longer numb. This is why the awakened sometimes suffer more intensely. They feel every wound. They feel every shadow. They feel every longing that they once suppressed or ignored. And yet, paradoxically, this suffering is a sign of growth, not of failure. Because you cannot heal what you cannot feel. You cannot transform what you refuse to look at. You cannot transcend what you will not acknowledge. This is why the illusion of perfection must be abandoned. The saints did not become saints by avoiding the battle. They became saints by facing it. By walking through it. By sitting in the fire without running from the heat. And so must you. But there is another, even deeper truth that emerges only when you've walked long enough in this struggle. Lust is not trying to destroy you, it is trying to show you something. It is not an enemy to be slain. It is a messenger to be understood. Every surge of desire contains a communication. A longing for connection. A hunger for intimacy. A wound demanding attention. A loneliness aching to be held. A fear begging to be recognized. Desire is rarely about the body alone. It is the body trying to speak on behalf of the heart, the psyche, the unhealed parts of the soul. And if you listen, really listen, the message becomes clear. You do not merely want pleasure. You want closeness. You want warmth. You want to be seen without judgment. You want to feel less alone in a universe that can often feel impossibly vast. This is why lust can feel so overwhelming. It carries the weight of everything you've never said, everything you've never healed, everything you've never allowed yourself to feel. But once you understand this, once you stop treating lust as a monster under the bed and start treating it as a wounded inner voice, the entire dynamic changes. You stop fighting yourself. You stop shaming yourself. You stop treating your humanity as something to be fixed. And instead, you begin doing the real work. You attend to the wound beneath the desire. This might mean feeling the loneliness you've been avoiding. Facing the insecurity buried under the craving. Acknowledging the childhood pain that created the longing. Releasing the self-judgment that fuels the cycle. Allowing yourself to grieve what was never healed. This is the work that actually transforms desire. Not suppression. Not denial. Not religious guilt. But honest presence with the truth of your experience. And in this presence, something remarkable begins to happen. Desire stops being a force that controls you. It becomes a force that teaches you, ****. The heat is still there, yes, but the heat no longer burns you. The impulse still rises, yes, but it no longer drags you into unconsciousness. The longing still pulses, yes, but it no longer dictates your choices. Because now you are watching it. You are holding it. You are breathing with it. You are meeting it like an old friend you finally understand. This is mastery. Not the mastery of domination, but the mastery of intimacy, intimacy with your own inner life. And it leads to something even more profound. You begin to feel compassion for yourself. You see how hard you have tried. You see how deeply you have longed to be whole. You see how often you have fallen not because you were wicked. But because you were wounded. Because you were lonely. Because you were human. And compassion becomes the gateway to freedom. Because the moment you stop hating yourself for the battle loses its ability to control you. Then, finally, you come to the deepest truth of all. You are the awareness behind the struggle, not the struggle itself. You are the sky, not the storm. You are the ocean, not the wave. You are the awareness in which desire comes and goes. You are the field of consciousness in which all experience rises and falls. When you rest in this awareness, even for a moment, the battle becomes lighter, softer, less personal. The desire arises and fades. The shame dissolves. The fear loosens. The wounds breathe. The loneliness softens. The cycle loosens its grip. Because you finally know the truth. You are not broken. You are becoming whole, ****. And so the final instruction is simple. Be gentle with yourself. Be honest about your struggle. Seek support when you need it. Face your wounds with courage. Practice presence with your desire. And above all, remember that you are not alone. Every mystic, every seeker, every awakened soul has walked this same path. Not one of them escaped this battle. Not one of them was spared the fires of transformation. This path is difficult, yes. But it is sacred. And you are strong enough to walk it. Because the flesh may be weak. But the spirit, when tended with truth and love, is stronger than any temporary desire. And the awareness behind both flesh and spirit is infinite.